Okay, so I think we're live. So I was just going through with your classmates here about some of the documents that I'd sent out and kind of the work I do as a forensic rehabilitation counselor. You should have received this. This is a job analysis. The job analysis essentially would determine if your client or if you're in the public sector, the consumer has the physical, cognitive, mental, emotional abilities to do the job. Because think about it. Say you are I'm the counselor, I'm evaluating you. I give you an IQ test, and your IQ is 50, but you want to be a brain surgeon. Well, that's not going to work, right? You don't have the intellectual capacity to be able to do that job. That kind of stuff would be picked up in this job analysis. Now, let's say, again, I'm working with the veteran, and say he or she lost both of their legs, and they want to do job X, whatever job X is. I would go through this, and it's not rocket science. Go and fill out, okay, what's the job title? Where's the work at? What education is required? What kind of licensure or certification? Is it skilled, unskilled? Do you need, like for us, once you guys finish here, you'll take your CRC exam, right? Certified Rehabilitation Counselor. If you go on with your career, want to have your own private practice, you'll probably become a licensed counselor, right? That's one of the things I am, licensed clinical professional counselor. So that would be like the license certification. Equipment use. What does a rehab counselor use? Computer, fax machine, phone, zero, who knows what. It's going to vary. The work environment. So if I'm a teacher here, I'm working on a campus, I might go out to internship sites, I might go see clients, who knows. Distance from transportation. Why would distance be important? Well, again, what if the person is in a wheelchair? Now in DC, it might not be that big of a deal where they can get metro access and call and get a ride somewhere. But what if we live in Montana and the nearest city is 5 hours away? Or what if I'm a single mom and I have 5 kids? Well, then daycare is make or break, right? I'm not going to leave my kids and go get a job for X amount of hour if no one's watching my kids. One of the studies I did years ago is I would ask people that were disabled and trying to go through rehabilitation counseling, okay, what's stopping you from getting a job? Now, of course, a lot of people said, well, I don't have the right training. All the jobs are like in nursing or accounting or who knows what. So education is one piece. One thing that 0 men, but a lot of women said was daycare. So again, you got to know who your client is, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Sometimes things like their religion or sexual orientation. Why? Because imagine if I'm trying to get you a job in a law firm, you got to dress nice, right? You can't just show up in an AC/DC t-shirt, ripped up shorts. Your attire, your clothes alone would preclude you from getting that job. Hours of work. Many times people can't work full time. So the structure, I might have to restructure the work schedule and things of that nature. The interpersonal environment, you can see, are they supervising people? Do they have public contact? Are they working around others? Imagine if someone has anger management problems. We probably don't want to turn them into a car salesman, right? Because the person that buy a car will probably get punched in the face. We, as counselors, that might sound silly, but we need to think about things down the road before we put our clients in a position where they could get in trouble. So exertion level, these categories on the exertion level here, these are from the Department of Labor. I didn't create these out of the midair. So sedentary, it means basically like working in an office and picking up files. It basically means lifting 0 pounds frequently up to 10 pounds occasionally. So like folders, books, and so on. Light is 10 to 20 pounds lifting. So it's a job that requires you to lift 10 pounds frequently or once in a while 20 pounds. Medium is 25 to 50. Heavy is 50 to 100. Very heavy is over 50, over 100. Like maybe a carpenter, they got to carry all these heavy things. So exertion level. And then most common posture. I would recommend putting like a percentage. Maybe like, 30% walking, 20% standing, 50% sitting. Whatever it is, it is. Now in the back, if you look at the back of this form, these are all the nuts and bolts. How much lifting, twisting, pushing, pulling, crouching. Driving a motor vehicle for a job does not mean commuting like you did down here to DC. It means driving the UPS truck. or driving like a delivery, you're a mailman or mailwoman. That's what driving a motor vehicle means. It means it's essential functions of the job. Remember reading about like the American with Disabilities Act and stuff like that in the beginning chapters? What that is getting at is essential functions, things that you have to be able to do that I can't change or modify with my job analysis. Okay? So you can see there's just all these categories, and you just check yes or no, and how many times, and write a description. Then what I do is I have the employer sign it. The reason that's important is say I'm sitting here. Sometimes in the old days, I would take my clients out to jobs and actually get them the jobs and sit on the interviews. So I would complete these when I'm there. But let's say the employer says, okay, we'll work with you. We'll modify this job to only be 10 pounds. But the person shows up for work day one. Okay, you got to lift 50 pounds. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The person can say, well, I never said that. Well, wait a minute. Didn't you sign this here on May the 1st? Is this your signature? You see where I'm going with that? Things like for me in the private sector, everything has to be carefully documented. And you'll see that once we go through this report. And then what happens is I send it to the doctor or the psychiatrist, and they approve or disapprove it. So in other words, before I would send a person to work, I would have their doctor or doctors say, yes, they can do this job. Why? Because as a private rehabilitation counselor, I could be sued if I do something wrong. In the public sector, where you guys are going to probably do your internships and start off, it's not like that. The laws are written in a way so that you're almost like a policeman or a fireman, where the laws are written to preclude people suing you for punitive damages. But for me, in the private sector, I'm expected to have all the bells and whistles, all the licensure, all the experience. So in other words, if I would make a mistake, like when we get to the rehabilitation plan, and I would forget, say I'm sending the person to GW, I forget to put a computer in there, and they need a computer, that $2,000 might come out of my pocket. So it's a different ball game. Private is every client has an attorney, and they're involved in lawsuits. Public is they were born with something, or something happened, and there's no third party to sue. I mean, who are they going to sue? God? You see what I'm getting at? So in the work that I've always done, there was always litigation involved. So out of about 5,000 people I've worked with, maybe 10 didn't have attorneys. Something like that, maybe 20 at the most. So before I'd be even allowed to talk to the client, I have to go through the attorney and get permission. Sometimes they would sit in on our first meeting. Think about how a person's behavior might change if their attorney is sitting in our first meeting, right? And furthermore, if they're hearing in their ear, oh, this rehab person's going to try to get you a job, but if we go to court and find that you're permanently disabled, we're going to get you $1 million. See how that might affect their behavior. So the private sector, some good things about it is you can set your own fees, you can make up your own schedule, you can work kind of when you want to work, but the risks, it's like risk reward. There's more risk involved, but the reward is higher as well. The public sector, where I would suggest that you guys start, is these people are not involved in litigation. They don't have attorneys, so they probably want your help, and they'd be more cooperative, and there's really no one looking over your shoulder to a certain degree. That's why, coming back to your question about, can you intern in forensic? I mean, in theory, it's possible. In theory, I could become president of the United States. I'm older than 35 and I'm a citizen, but is realistic? No. That same kind of thought needs to go into our decisions about developing a program of rehabilitation for a person. Just because there's a 1% chance they might be able to do it, I would not recommend that. I'd rather have a rehabilitation plan that has probably like an 80 or 90% chance of succeeding versus, 1% chance, like playing the lottery. And another reason is in the private sector, I have to go and get my own work. So if I have these great plans to send everybody to Harvard to become a brain surgeon, but none of them work, the insurance companies are not going to hire me anymore because it's a waste of their time. You understand? So basically, kind of like you guys want to have good grades on your exams and finals, that's how I approach job placement. So I really would want to have at least an 80 or 90% success rate, meaning I evaluated this person, I spent time training them, we did a job analysis, we did all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, they get the job that I predict they're going to get and corresponding salaries. Because for me, the problem that I would usually face in the private sector is say I'm working with this person where their last job they got paid $100,000. I can get them a job easy, but if the job pays 40 grand, I got a problem. Think about your own life. If you're making 100, are you going to be happy with 40? Or if you got 3 kids in a house and a dog? You see where I'm going? That's the problem that would confront me on many of my cases is, yeah, I can get them jobs, but the money is going to be different. And in some states, the insurance company might be on the hook for that. So in other words, if I get them a job for 40,000 and they're making 100,000 and say they're 30, that's 60,000 different a year times 35 years is a big number, right? Plus all free health care. They can go see their doctors all the time for free, all free medicine. So it adds up to be a lot of money. That's why in the private sector, the insurance company, if I go to them and say, hey, you got to invest 50 or 100 grand to help this person to get them back on their feet, they might say no, but I have to. And let me go back to my background. My undergraduate was economics and business administration, double major. Then my master's is counseling psychology. And then my PhD and AGS from Maryland was in counseling. So I use my business skills for my own private practice and also for communicating with businesses so that they can understand what I'm recommending is in their economic best interests. It's not that they're helping my client because they just want to be a good Samaritan and do the right thing. It's also going to make them money and be in best interest. That's what a businessman or woman wants to hear. You know, they don't want to hear, oh, you're doing this to be a good person. They're in business to make money. And honestly, that's how I kind of approach rehabilitation counseling as well. I mean, we all want to help people, right? We all want to be good people. But to me, even though I love it and I would do it for free, I also have a family, I have 2 kids, I have a house, blah, blah, blah. I want to make some money. So in my life, being a teacher, like my full-time gig is here at GW, doing a lot of research, is really cool. I love doing all that stuff, but actually having a practice where I actually do it, I like doing that as well. And I think it makes me a better teacher because imagine maybe like, let's not say GW, but say like in your undergraduate, did you have a teacher that might have been teaching for 30 years and might have the same old notes, you know what I mean? And their skills and what they're telling you might be outdated. See, for me, if I have clients all the time, I'm learning new stuff every day. I try to learn something new with every single client I work with. I really do. I'll give an example. Like when I was your age, I remember I had a client. For you, it might sound like a dream client. They had 2 master's degrees, one in mechanical engineering and one in IT. Wow, those are pretty good degrees, right? But what happened to this guy is he had a stroke. He was what's called a project, what was his official title? Project engineer or something, where like say we're building a new GW building. There's one guy that's in charge of all, like supervising all the architects, the engineers, the laborers, the plumbers, all that stuff. That was his job to manage the big construction project. So what happened to him is he was in Chicago. He lived in Maryland. He was in Chicago evaluating some building, had a stroke like on the 100th floor, like 50th floor or whatever it was. And he had to learn how to walk and talk again. So for a period of time, he was in a hospital in Chicago and couldn't talk, couldn't get out of bed. I mean, he had a stroke. He was in bad shape. And then later down the line, once he got back to Maryland and was reaching something called maximum medical improvement. Think of a bell-shaped curve. And we're getting treatment. We're as good as we're going to get medically or psychologically or both. That's MMI, maximum medical improvement. That's when I would come in and do my evaluation. So I'd test for your IQ. I would test for your personalities. I would test for your interests, for your achievement. What are your reading and math skills and reading comprehension and so on? The reason that data is important is because if I'm going to recommend college, you have to have a certain level of reading ability and mathematic ability and so on and so on. So all these data points have meaning for me. So going back to this guy, so when I met with him, he was in a hospital bed and he couldn't walk or talk or anything. And his last job, I mean, this was probably 10 years ago, he was making like $160,000. So for me, after I went through all this stuff with him, worked with him for a long period of time, probably, well, it might not sound long to you, but like a year and a half, something like that, I was able to get him a good job and he was making like 120, but there was still that $40,000 spread. I mean, that really was almost like a miracle, taking a person that couldn't walk or talk anymore and going through rehab and then still making six figures, that's pretty good. But there was still that loss of income, and that would be the challenges that I would face. And we'll get into some of that more detail. So did I give you guys the rehab plans? And did you have this report? Okay, so what we'll do is I kind of want to tell you how a case would, or see how I talk? The person, I look at it as a case because that's, in a forensic world, that's exactly what it is. The reason that I was even hired or retained, I'm retained like an attorney. So before I would even talk to the client or take the case or anything, I get a check. I get paid up front, which is cool. I mean, I like doing business like that. And furthermore, again, I only have to see this person one time. When you work with people for years and years and years in a clinical aspect, meaning dealing with all their aches and pains and getting their surgeries and getting medications and dealing with it, all the stuff that happens to them, I couldn't do that with my full-time job here at GW, just unfit. So in a forensic capacity, it's a lot easier just to meet the person one time. Usually what happens is one attorney will retain me, and then we'll reach out to the other attorney and say, like one today I just set up, depending on where they want me to meet, either one attorney's office, big fancy marble conference room, the others, or a neutral location. Many times they'll like rent out a place where it will be like for do you guys know what depositions are? What a deposition is if you're involved in a lawsuit, there's a thing called discovery, which both sides will basically do their homework and find out what's going on. What are the doctors saying? What's their background? What happened? Who knows what? Then there's something called discovery where they're going to ask for all kinds of reports. Like for the inner city kids I work with, I get every single piece of paper from the day they were born. So I get their birth records from Johns Hopkins. I get any time they ever went to a doctor. I get all the stuff that happened in their life. And sometimes it's boxes full of stuff. And I have to read all of it. Now I'm paid X amount of dollars per hour to go through it. So when I actually write this report, I get my retainer up front. I get a chunk of money up front before I do anything. Then I usually will meet with the person to be determined where. Then I will do my evaluation. So I'll test them for IQs, reading math levels, personalities, all kinds of stuff. Then I'll take time to write my evaluation. And my evaluation would probably be at least 25 pages, summarizing this whole person's life, and then where do we go from here. Now, the case in here, the evaluation that's going to be covered in this case, for you online people, probably would have been like about 6 or 7 pages. The reason being is it's workers' compensation, so the only medical stuff that I would get would be from that one injury that's under the lawsuit right now. So in other words, if the person was hit by a truck when they were 12 and I'm meeting them now when they're 40, I wouldn't have that information. But in the forensic capacity I do, because what they do is they send out subpoenas to every hospital within hundreds of miles. It's like a fishing expedition, and see what comes back. And I'll get all this information, which helps me. It takes time and it takes money to get all the stuff, but I'll have every medical, psychological thing that ever happened to them in their life, which leads me to my evaluation. So many times when I go through my structured clinical interview, I already know the question. I know the answers. I know what their background is. And like one of my questions would be, okay, pre-existing conditions. Has anything ever happened to you before, the truck hit you? No, I've been perfect health. Oh, really? Did I read that, when you're in high school, you broke your leg? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, did I read here that you were involved in a car accident a couple years ago and had surgery to your back? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That tells me something about the client. You see where I'm going? So I might know a lot of the answers to my questions, but I still want to ask them to get a sense of who am I working with. Now, when you guys are starting off as rookie counselors, you're not going to deal with all that stuff. It will probably be not a super complex case. It might be a challenging case, but there's not going to be all kinds of pre-existing things. But to me, as a rehabilitation counselor, I need to look at the person holistically, not just the cut finger, but all the other bad stuff that happened to you when you're growing up. So let's talk about this report. Let's go through this report. This is actually a real report from 12 years ago. This was a school teacher that got beat up in school, and she had orthopedic injuries and also post-traumatic stress disorder and could never be a teacher again. So you can see in the beginning, and for you online folks, let's just deconstruct this report. So the client's the client, their social security, when they were injured, the date of the assessment, how old they are, age. Oh, this is actually, okay, this is a different one that I brought. This person actually, interestingly enough, worked in a supermarket from the day she graduated high school. Same employer. Think about it. Like, this person worked at the exact same employer for like 26 years or whatever it was. Think about it. That tells you something about your client right there, right? They have a good work ethic, they work. What happened to this person is she was a deli manager and she slipped and fell and hurt her back. But she didn't really have any major surgeries. She's had some physical therapy and stuff like that. But what happened is the supermarket chain pulled out of the state, so that when she was healed, there was no job to go back to because they left. There are no more supermarkets. It's closed. So what I had to do with this person was, this is actually, I'm glad I brought this case, is when I met with them at the attorney's office in rural Virginia, this person, if you picture Virginia, it was like, so here's DC up here. It was all the way back in the southwest corner, where a long time ago there used to be a lot of textile mills making, blankets and towel, but those jobs are gone. They went to Southeast Asia years ago. So in other words, when a job would be like advertised, hundreds of people would show up for one job. So the labor market was challenging. So when I first did my evaluation with this person, basically what I said to the attorney and to the client is, listen, we need to get you some kind of computer skills. Person never used a computer in their life. Because the labor market now, you graduated high school 26 years ago or whatever it was, you never did any other schooling, your skills, quite frankly, are outdated. Now, I wouldn't say it like that, but I would say it in words that the attorney would understand. And essentially what I said is, Mr. Attorney, I'm going to get your client a computer. I'm going to go to the insurance company before we even start and get a computer. The reason why is the way I do job placement is I'm going to send her weekly job leads. So go to employer X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to follow up on your results. And in the beginning, this person didn't even know how to send an email. Think about how strange that is. I mean, you guys are probably like, what? Don't know how to send an email? So in the beginning, what I would do is I would write her resume, write her cover letters, and teach her how to cut and paste the cover letter so when she sends it off to the employer, it looks like it's from her. And slowly bring her up. See how I'm doing job placement, but concurrent with that, I want to try to get this person some training so I have a realistic shot to get her a job. Now, a couple things also, and the attorney's like, oh, that would never happen. I was like, how long you been practicing? 40 years? I've never seen an insurance company buy a computer off the bat. And I was like, well, you wait and see. So what I told the insurance company is, listen, they live in a place where there's no jobs. We need to get them computer skills, or this is a waste of my time and I'm not taking the case. They're like, well, we're not doing it. I was like, fine, I'm not working this case. A couple days later, they came back. We changed our mind. So right off the bat, I got her a computer. Then I went to the insurance company and said, hey, we need to get them some computer training. No, we're not spending anything, blah, 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 blah. So I sent her to the local public library to get some free training. So in my reports, I would document she went there, she did this, she's doing blah, blah, blah. And that gives me more ammunition to go to the insurance company to say, let's invest. So after the person exhausted all that stuff, and concurrent with this, one of the things you have to face when you're in job placement is the longer the person is off work and not working, lowers the odds or probability that they'll ever work again. So in other words, if I got hurt 30 years ago and I haven't worked, I'm probably not going to go back to work, right? If I'm just sitting on my couch taking Xanax and Percocet and OxyContin all the time, my quality of life is terrible. I'm not making any money. I'll probably never get out of this rut. So essentially what I told the insurance company was, okay, we need a computer. I sold it as this is how I'm doing job placement. Then we got the free computer training. Then what I told her is when we're looking for jobs, I want you to volunteer. Why? So I got her a job like at a local hospital. You walk in, mom and dad's having surgery. Okay, where's the surgery room? Okay, room 1212 or whatever. So she volunteered. The reason I did that is because it helps me fill a hole in her resume. In other words, when I would take her on job placement, well, what have you been doing for 6 years? Person might be like, you know what I mean? So I would actually role play and give them the answers, and hopefully they would say them in the interviews. But one of my strategies to mitigate her lack of working would be right on the front of the resume, okay, volunteering at XYZ hospital. Then I was able to get her some training at the local community college in computers. So as soon as you look at her resume, It shows I'm going to college and here's my job at the hospital versus I haven't done anything in 6 years. See how that's moving us in the right direction? And plus, it keeps her off of the couch. When you have people sitting around doing nothing, just think about your own life. I don't know what you guys have going on in your life, but you're taking classes, you might be working, you might have a boyfriend or girlfriend. You're busy, right? You don't have time to sit around. Now, if you are a person that's been injured and you have no schedule, what happens is you're taking all these medications, you start thinking stuff. Oh, wow, my life is terrible. I hate you start getting depressed and all this bad stuff happens. That's when I need to jump in there and stop it and get you going. So that's where like the part-time internship, or like an internship actually, the volunteer job. So that gives you a little bit of background. So I'm coming in here trying to establish a rapport with my client, letting her know that I'm here to help her. You can trust me, all this kind of stuff, so we have a good working relationship. Bringing her computer skills from 0 to at least somewhere above 0. Updating her resume, getting her volunteer experience, and concurrent, trying to find her a job. See how I got all kinds of things going on with this one person at one time. So let's talk about this report. So every month, how I would get paid in the private sector is imagine if you just worked for like a state agency, or say you work at the Veterans Administration or something like that, you have so many clients. In some state agencies, you might have 300 clients. As a private counselor, I would probably have 10 to 15. But the person hasn't worked in 5 years, you've had him as a client for a day. Why is he working? The pressures and the timelines and the stakes are greater. So I have to document everything, and this is how I get paid. So I bill my time, and then I would send this to the insurance company or whoever, and they would pay me for whatever I did that month. So let's kind of go through. So we kind of talked a little bit about the evaluation or assessment phase. We read that in our book, right? Where we're trying to figure out the strengths and weaknesses and what I'm going to recommend for this person. So that's already done. So now what we're doing here is physical limitations, work performance evaluation. What that is maybe in some of the video lectures that we've had together, you have heard me use the term FCE, functional capacity evaluation. What happens is say you have some kind of disability and you go to your doctor, they'll give like a range, like on this job analysis, like sedentary, light, medium. It's like a ballpark category of what the person can do. But what a functional capacity evaluation, or what they call it here, work performance evaluation, is very specific. So in other words, in this one, they can lift, you can see how it's light, so 10 to 20 pounds. Remember we talked about that in the beginning of class. But also, they need to move around when it's sitting most of the time. They go into greater demands about what they can do. Now, I've seen FCEs where it says the person can walk a quarter mile. They can lift 12.2 pounds. They can sit for 37 minutes. How do they know this? Because they actually sit there and they test them. Sit in this chair. How long can you deal with it? So you can see how getting like a functional capacity evaluation or something is like the really fine details versus a categorical light, sedentary, medium. Does everybody follow me with that? Okay, so we use this physical limitations data from the doctor or from the physical therapist as kind of like a funnel. So if you imagine a funnel, there's no disability, there's all these jobs. The person can do 1,000 jobs. But as we start going down 50 pounds, 40 pounds, 30, 20, 10, 0, it reduces the amount of jobs this person can do. And I need to take that information for my rehabilitation plan and then for my job placement. In other words, if the person can only lift 10 pounds, it doesn't make any sense trying to find a job where they can lift 50, right? Because even if they get the job analysis will not be approved. And furthermore, as a private rehab counselor, say I put a person that can only lift 10 in the 50-pound category and they re-injure their back, guess who's getting sued? Me. And they already got an attorney. So all they got to do is pick up the phone and then I got a lawsuit. So I go through everything very scientifically to make sure whatever I'm recommending is good for them. That might be sounding like a lot, but let's go through this and I think you'll get the idea. So you can see here, period covered, so from February 8th to March 13th, so roughly 5 weeks. Here's our rehabilitation goals: to assist Mrs. W in returning to suitable gainful employment. That is a legal term. That means that the person has a job that's commensurate with their education, training, salaries, backgrounds, and so on. Meaning, if you guys finished here with your master's degrees, working at McDonald's would not be suitable gainful employment, right? Now, nothing against McDonald's or anything like that, but you don't need a master's degree to work there, right? So what suitable gainful employment means is the job fits who you are educationally, vocationally, and other variables. Now, activities, let's just read through here. So the first thing is I document, okay, I'm going to contact Mrs. W to talk about job search, scheduling an appointment. Now, what happened with this person? This is actually a fascinating case from a counseling standpoint is when I met with this person, this was March 16th, so I probably met with the person about at least a year ahead of time, maybe a year and a half. And I did all these testings and I interviewed her and I figured out what's going on with this person. Then I write my evaluation. Then once my evaluation gets sent off to all the attorneys in the case, the client's attorney and the insurance company or the employer like GW, the attorneys digest it, and then I'll put together a rehabilitation plan. Now, essentially what I need to do is I need to predict what's going to happen with this person a year or two down the road. What kind of jobs can they get and what are they going to pay? So what I predicted for this person was a customer service job, but to get there we need computer skills, we need a computer. You start seeing what we need to do. We need to take this person who never worked on a computer ever. Think about what a customer service person does. They're on the computer, they're talking on the phone, and that kind of stuff. So that was my theory of what we're going to do. Now, this rehabilitation plan is from a different case, but if you look down here, it's going to be the same thing. So I'll list certain jobs and the specific salary ranges that correspond to whatever job I'm recommending, right? So you guys got this. It's a little smaller. But you can see this was the one that was the teacher that got beat up. Now, this lady, she was born in 1941. Now, you guys may think, wow, that's really old. That's like during World War II. You know, when this person came across my desk, essentially, she was, how old was she? She was born in 41, and this was in 7. So 66 years old, right? Is that right? Yeah, I think so. So think about it. When I first, and this shows you how wrong you can be as a counselor. When I first saw her, I'm like, 66, what am I going to do with this lady? You know, she's at the end of her earning capacity, but you know what? Never judge a book by its cover. Because what happened with this lady is her husband was in the military, and he was like a colonel or some major or something like that. And once he came back and was retired, he was in the house all the time. So she was super motivated to get out and get a job. She couldn't take it anymore. You know what I mean? It might sound funny, but I thought, okay, she's older. She probably is on the lower earning capacity of her career. Think about, now for a lot of people, your earnings are going to be like a bell-shaped curve. Think about if you're a carpenter. You're making money, you're getting older, you might be having some injuries, you can't do all the same stuff, and then eventually there's going to be a downward decline of your earnings. Or, I don't know, think of a professional football player. They might shoot right up, but after a couple years, their career is over and it kind of goes down to nothing. Now, for me, as a professor and as a forensic rehab counselor, hopefully my career will be pretty much straight up with maybe a little tailing off at the end. But for most people, it's going to be somewhat of a bell-shaped curve, their earnings over their lifetime. It might be skewed one way or the other, but that's kind of what it will be. So coming back to this lady that was older, I didn't know about the variable that her husband came back and now she couldn't wait to get out of the house. It really motivated her to get a job, which worked out into my benefit. But coming back to this lady, so this was a lady that worked at the same supermarket for 26 years, and she had no computer skills. But my theory was, or my hypothesis or my rehabilitation plan was to turn her into a customer service representative, but we got to do some stuff before she'd really be a candidate to get that kind of job, right? Now, what happened in a nutshell, I'm going to kind of give you a synopsis of what happened in this case, then we'll go through line by line, is everything that I predicted basically happened. We got her the volunteer job, we got her college training, I got her computer, things look like they're on track. We got her the dream job that I predicted a year and a half in advance, but the first day on the job, she walked off the job. And this was the best employer in this area for like probably 100 miles. they were willing to work around, like when I did the job analysis, they were willing to work around her college schedule, even pay tuition assistance, help her keep going to college. They're really willing to do a lot of stuff. And I, worked this. I had all our doctors sign off on it and so on. But what happened was there was something that I didn't know about that we'll get into that caused this case to self-destruct. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So what happened is think about it. I'm fighting. I'm getting her computer. I'm getting training. I'm going to bat for her. Not only did she walk off the job, but she quit going to school. She quit her classes. So all the stuff that I fought tooth and nail, and even like school, I paid out of my own pocket for her tuition and eventually got it back. Between me and you, she kind of let me down, but I would never say that or show that feeling to her because it's business. We got a counseling relationship. So she actually was volunteering at the Danville Hospital, which is far. So this is Virginia. It's all the way down here. Like up in the mountains, there's really nothing else there. So there's not a lot of employment. So once I found out that she quit her job on the first day and quit school, I basically said, you got to go back to your volunteer job. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, go back to Danville Hospital, continue your volunteering. Okay, next activity, I contacted them. She's doing her volunteer job. We talk about resuming job search. Now, in these next activities, what I'm going through here is I qualify the job leads that I get for her before I send them her way. Again, if a person can only lift 10 pounds, I'm not going to send them a job lead for 100 pounds because it's not going to work, right? It's going to be a waste of their time and a waste of my time. So what I would do here is, so for this, I looked over 75 jobs and I found 8 that were appropriate. Using my clinical experience, my thousands of job analysis that I've done, and working with people, I kind of knew what these jobs were about. So you can see it's not rocket science. So I would, even back then, this was a long time ago, maybe fax their cover letter and resume, do it online, email, whatever. You can see how I'm contacting the company, the job title, how's the contact, and what's going on. So I would give them kind of like a cognitive behavioral homework assignment. So I would give her these leads on, say, on Monday morning, say, go for it. You contact all these employers, you do stuff. I give them actually job logs so that they write down, okay, XYZ company, spoke to Mr. Smith. They said they're not interested. ABC company, spoke to Mrs. Jones. I got an interview for next week. So I keep tabs on my people really closely, like looking over the shoulder to make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. So you can see we go down through our job search activities. And then what this email on February 14th is I got an email from the insurance company, and they found out this lady quit her job, and they were furious after thinking about it. They've invested, probably at this point, tens of thousands of dollars in my time working with them. They've invested thousands of dollars in training. They've invested a new computer. And these people, like this person, it might not sound like a lot, but she was getting $400 a week. So my clients, when I was working in a clinical capacity, are paid to be my clients. That's going to be a different thing than what you guys will come across in your internship. Why? Because they're involved in litigation. They're suing someone. So they would get 2/3 of their regular salary. So the guy that I talked about in the beginning, let's just say $100,000 to use round numbers. When a person would be my client, they'd be getting paid $67,000 a year just to cooperate and play ball with me. That's a different thing. That's private. So kind of coming back to this. So I would actually go down, in addition to doing the job placement via phone, emails, that kind of stuff, I'd actually go and meet with her like every couple of weeks and actually take her to interviews and stuff like that. So you can see her, I met with her, a bunch of guys just look at it. So at the bottom page 2, I met with her at her house. We talked for a job search appointment. I went through all the job leads, reviewed her weekly job search forms. So I have these forms of when I give her assignments, X, Y, and Z, okay, what did you do? Prove it to me. And basically we talked about why she walked off the job training program. So this lady, the employer was willing to work around their college schedule, pay for college, do everything theoretically possible. Oh, and one thing I forgot to tell you is in Virginia, there's something called a DARS, D-A-R-S, Division of Services and Aging and so on. In Maryland, it's the Maryland DORS, D-O-R-S, Division of Rehabilitation Services. In DC, it's DCRSA. So every state has like a state agency. When I was a professor at the University of Maryland, I heard this company wanted to hire people with disabilities. My radar goes up. Oh, that's what I want to hear. So I called like the main hiring person and said, hey, I want to bring my client, Mrs. W. And he's like, listen, I don't meet with people. They go through my team. We test them. You don't get to talk to me. What basically my pitch was in a nutshell, well, you know what? I'm a professor at Maryland. I have 20 different rehabilitation counselors that work for me. I can spread your company's good news. Give me some of your time. And he made an exception to meet with me and the client. So then I drive all the way down there, take the person on the interview. I do my job analysis. Actually, I run the interview. What do I mean by running the interview? So I would basically, as soon as we sit down, start telling the interviewer the questions, he answers to his questions before I even ask him. This is what happened to this lady. She didn't have surgery. She had physical therapy. Here's her background. Here's her resume. I would be giving him all this information before, like think of a normal interview. The person making the hiring decision asks the questions, right? So I want to flip it on them. I'm going to be giving them answers, and they're going to be absorbing the information. Why? Because it doesn't put my client on the spot like a Q&A. Okay, what have you been doing for 6 years? Why do you want this job? You know what I mean? And the drive out to this place, I would role play with her and plug in these answers. Maybe sometimes they remember some of them, who knows what. But if I'm running the interview and giving the data to the interviewer, then it makes the interview go better and it increases the odds of getting him a job. So I did all this stuff. We did the job analysis. I explained, like pretend we're in the interview right now. Okay, Mr. Employer, the reason I'm doing this job analysis is this job looks perfect. Her physical therapist says she can do light work, which is 10 to 20. She's going to be working in a sedentary capacity, so it looks perfect. But I always like to do everything by the book. So what I'd like to do is a job analysis and send this to her doctor, and the doctor will sign off saying, yes, this job is perfect for them. I'll give you a copy. You can put it in the file. How's that sound? So I really don't want to give them an opportunity to say no. See how I say all the great things about what this is all about and this is why I'm doing it, and then put the ball in their court. And the person's like, oh, okay. Now think about approved job analysis. Just keep that in the back of your mind for a little bit. So this person walked off the job. So I'm meeting with her and saying, okay, what's going on? This is her story. Why don't you just read the bottom and we will all read it together. So she went to the first day of training at this company. They gave her the photograph, got her badge. She starts doing some training. And then basically at lunchtime just walks off the job and never comes back. After working for a year and a half to get her this opportunity. Now think as a counselor, that can be very frustrating, right? Imagine you work for a year and a half to get a date with this guy and then he doesn't show up. You wouldn't be happy, right? That's kind of like what happened. This person, we did all this stuff, and then when the ball's in her court and it's time for the work, she just gave up without really trying. So you can see, some of the stuff, I don't know if this is true, but this was her story. She said that the other trainees stated that the customers call you angry, they call you the B word and have sex on the phone. It sounds bizarre. Who knows? She left the employer and called her psychologist and basically went home, put the covers over her head, and didn't get out of bed for a week. So I'm calling her like that first day. Okay, how'd the job go? Call her next day. Call her next day. Normally, I'm in touch with her all the time, and there's not this communication breakdown. So I'm like, what's going on? So I call her attorney. What's up with your client? How's she doing on the job? Well, I don't know. So you can see that something was going on with this person that I didn't really know about. When the insurance company found out about this, they wanted to cut her off, cut all her money. They're done with her, throw her away and be done with her. What I said to them is, hey, listen, I've invested a lot of time with this. I can get this person a job. Give us some more time. They thought she was crazy and they just wanted to get rid of her. So on February 15th, basically I'm calling the employer trying to save the job, saying anything I can to get her a second chance. Long story short, it had to go up to New York and had their headquarters make a decision if they're going to take this person back, and they decided not to. But what this person said is, you can see in the narrative in this paragraph, is she's saying, oh, I have a herniated disc, I can't do this, blah, 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 blah. Well, wait a minute. We did the job analysis, and your doctor and your psychologist said, yes, you can do this. Now, what this means for the attorney working for her is they're going to lose their case. This person's going to lose a lot of money. So he is probably very angry with her. But my job is to keep her working. So I tried saving the job, and it just didn't work out for whatever reason. A lot of these activities go through this about what happened, um, talking with this company to try to give her a second chance, and they basically decided we're not going to give her a second chance. You guys can read through it, but that's the gist of it. So what's going on in here is then once the attorney gets the gist of this, on page 4 we're talking, I get a fax from the attorney basically saying, oh, it's all your fault why this person walked off. The job wasn't for her. She couldn't do this job, making any kind of excuse possible so that it was on me versus her. So then what I basically did is I tried calling the guy and basically saying, hey, wait a minute. Do you read the reports I send out every month? Well, that's your problem. If you're not reading my reports I sent you, that's on you. I didn't say it like that, but that's my message. Point number 2 is this job is exactly what we projected a year and a half ago on our rehabilitation plan. See job number 2 and the salary range? This is what all the money and time that I invested in this person is for this job. And so what the attorney tried saying is, well, this was telemarketing. You guys have gotten telemarketer calls, right? In some states, that's looked upon as like not really a good job. He tried to say that this job was a telemarketer and it was a waste of time. I'm like, wait a minute. What job title is on the job analysis? Customer service. What job title was on our rehab plan? Customer service. See, I'm painting them into a corner. So he was trying to make the case that it was all my fault that this person couldn't do the job, so her walking off was irrelevant, which was not the case. So you see how a job analysis could be very important. All her doctor said she can do it. I'm not a doctor. I'm a doctor in counseling, but I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. But all the people that she's worked with for years said she can do it. So this is on that. So what we continue doing is doing a lot of job placement, just trying to find her other jobs. Now, in the meantime, what the insurance company wanted me to do is on page 5, IME, Independent Medical Examination. What this means is, say you have a client that goes to the same psychotherapist for 50 years for depression and they're not getting any better. Well, does that make sense? Think about, think about surgeries. Say you have a back injury and you get 50 surgeries and you're not getting better. Does it make any sense to have more? Or say, you're depressed and you're taking this medication. If you're not getting a return on the investment or return from the treatment, think again the bell-shaped curve. If we're getting treatment, and we're not getting any utility or benefit from it, well, then it's time to stop the treatment because it's a waste of time. So what an independent medical examination is it will have like the world's greatest expert in psychiatry or psychology or surgery evaluate my person. And this person that does the IME probably, a lot of times I like to use professors at Johns Hopkins. So they have 200 publications. They've done 10,000 surgeries. They've written a textbook on surgery. So if you want to try to discredit their opinion, good luck. You know what I'm saying? Coming back to the forensic thing, that's why in the forensic arena, you need to have all your P's and Q's and really know what you're doing. Otherwise, they'll make the case that you don't know what you're doing if you do. So what they wanted me to do is find an IME for a psychiatrist. But in this rural part of Virginia, it's not Northern Virginia, where there's all kinds of hospitals and doctors. It's a mom and pop, one cow town, essentially. So trying to find a psychiatrist that was qualified to do an IME took a lot of time for me. See, the insurance company was very angry with her. But essentially I said, hey, give me a shot. I can really help her get back to work. So as all this stuff is going down, we continue job placement and so on. Now on page 6, another interesting thing. When I called the teachers at the community college, hey, how's Johnny or Jane doing in school? Well, I haven't seen them in 2 months. I'm like, what? What do you mean you haven't seen them in 2 months? Well, they stopped coming and whatever. And you can see here, like when I'm talking to the teacher, even the client told her about the job, the training program. She needed to arrive late for classes for training and basically missed the midterm exam and has an F. So again, like I tried to save the job for the employer, I'm trying to save this class for her. Can we get her a tutor? Can we get extra credit? Who knows what? I'm asking all kinds of stuff to save it for her. And you can see what the person said. That's why I quote it. It is possible, so response to my question, can we get her a tutor? Can we help her? Whatever. It is possible and unlikely. She's focused on what she can't do and what she can't do more than she says. The first time I met her, all she did was complain and told me everything she could not do. Think about it. If I'm your teacher and you come the first day of class, I can't. Like we talked about in the beginning, what do you do for a living? People start forming ideas about you. Think about the ideas this teacher started forming about this person, right? So, the last time she spoke to the client was January 18th. So now we're in March. So it's been a while since she went to class. So you can see here how this person kind of self-destructed even after all the stuff I did for her. But, I'm telling the insurance company, hey, give me some more time. We're continuing doing the job placement and so on. Long story short, what happened in this case was we had a really good job for her where they were going to pay for college and work around her schedule and do all kinds of, it was really one of the best employers for like 100 miles. She screwed up that job. She sabotaged it. She walked off her college training. That's down the tubes. So now basically, on the one hand, she did to get some updated computer skills. She does have some volunteer experience, but instead of trying to do job placement with a degree and some credentials, essentially I had the same person from day one with some now computer skills. So that's what's called transferable skills, meaning things that they learned in other jobs that they can take to a new job or the labor market and be compensated for that. So essentially I was using her transferable skills versus other skills she could have learned in college. And really what happened in this case, it was really, from a counseling standpoint, is fascinating. Unbeknownst to me, so this lady is like 46 or whatever she was. When she probably was in her 20s, she was physically, sexually, and emotionally abused by her husband. Her husband used to beat her up and, in her words, rape her and do all kinds of bad stuff to her. And she was, you've heard of like transference and countertransference and that kind of stuff. So she thought if she would have told me, the rehab counselor working for her, what she did, I was going to act like her husband. So this pre-existing, remember in the beginning when I talked about my clinical interview and looking for pre-existing conditions and other stuff that happened? I didn't know about that, and that's why this case exploded. Because she had this baggage from this emotional, sexual trauma, and it popped its head out when we got her to work. Apparently, I don't know this as fact, but if we take her at her word, and the people saying, oh, people have sex on the phone and call you the B word and stuff like that, maybe that could have triggered some PTSD symptoms. I don't know. Who knows? But I know two things. She quit her job on the first day, and she quit going to school. Right? Those are facts. They can't be disputed. Why it happened, who knows? And that's one thing that you're going to learn when you work with human beings, is 1 + 1 does not always equal 2. It equals 0, it can equal a million, who knows what. You might have heard the term perception is reality. Have you ever heard of that? So what that means when you're working in a rehabilitation counseling standpoint is even if the doctors say you can do it, they say you can lift 50 pounds, if the person has in their head that, no, I can't do this, I can't, we got a problem. And think about, like, have you guys had like theory and techniques and those kind of classes? So have they talked about like challenging irrational beliefs, like a cognitive approach? So, I mean, that's what we would kind of do. So like if the person would say to me, oh, I can't do this job, but there's no way, I'd be thinking, okay, let's digest it for a minute. How long you been seeing your psychologist? Oh, 7 years. Do you trust him? Oh yeah, Dr. X is great. Okay, your orthopedist, how long you been seeing him? Oh, 5 years, he's awesome. Okay, well, both of them said you could do this job. Do you see their signature right there? Do you see remember us doing this job analysis during the interview? Yeah. Well, both your doctors said you can do it. It would be my recommendation that you at least give it a try. Now, in this case, she already burned the bridge, and they weren't taking her back. But you could see how I'm always trying to, okay, I got her this job, let's save it. Got her in the school, let's save it. Sometimes you can't. So this is kind of what's going on. And the long and the short of it is I did get her another job. It paid less money and had not as good benefits, but at least she was done. Now, as a little cherry on top, when this case went to court, I was communicating with the attorney before and he was blaming on me. And I told him straight up, hey, listen, I've done everything by the book. We had the job analysis that was approved by both people. We have the rehabilitation plan that specified the job we were going to shoot for a year and a half down the road, the exact salaries we're shooting for, and this is what I delivered on. He's like, oh no, it's telemarketing. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll see you in court. He didn't probably think I'd show up. When we went to court that day and he saw me coming in, he settled the case like that. Because he knows whatever he said, he would look like a fool. Now, on the other side of the coin, this person, I don't know exactly what the money played out to be, nor do I care. It's not my business. But let's say this person would have been entitled to $100,000 as like a settlement. Because of the stuff that happened, she might have wound up with 25. So think about it. That attorney went from having 40 grand in their pocket to maybe now, I don't know, 6,000. They're not going to be happy about that. That's why they would want to go after me and blame it on me, even though that they know their client screwed up. Again, in the courtroom, sometimes the truth really doesn't matter, right? You guys are young. Do you remember, see, things in the courtroom, it's almost, the truth is important, but part of it is also theater and impressions. Trying to think of something that all you might know. Oh, how about this? You guys might be a little bit young, but do you remember like the O.J. Simpson case? Remember when that verdict came down? Depending on who you are, you might have seen it very, very differently, right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So like if you would interview a Caucasian person, not all of them, but a big chunk of them would think, yeah, O.J.'s guilty. They had the blood evidence. They had this, they had that. But in other groups of people, usually more in the lower socioeconomic status that had problems with the police and maybe been treated bad by the police, they bought into the argument, oh, you know, the glove doesn't fit, let's acquit. Even though medical science can prove if a glove was wet and now it's 6 months later, it's going to shrink. But in that drama in the courtroom, the impression was made. You guys follow what I'm saying? I don't know if you guys even know what the O.J. Simpson case is. Do you remember that case?
I do, but I think a current case would be the Trayvon Martin with George Zimmerman. That would have been a...
That's a totally different ballgame. I mean, that guy should have went to jail. He shot a kid. I mean...
There was still two different demographics of people that kind of wasn't favorable for...
Okay, so let's say that. So let's say if it's a shooting case like that, like for example, the case that I'm involved in now, where this person was really a young person with a young family, was a mechanical engineer, graduated from college just a couple years ago, went to a concert, did some drugs, came in across the police, and they beat the crap out of him, and he's dead. So it's my job to evaluate a dead person. That's complicated. Or say it's a pediatric case. So the person that I'm evaluating is 2 years old. I remember a case not too long ago for the Department of Justice where the people were from China. Both the husband and the wife were like super famous scientists. They were smarter than I could ever be. They were in Duke University doing some kind of high-tech research, but when they were growing up in China, they were exposed to slightly different pollutants and toxic things. And, you know, think about like in Guangzhou, where they're building everything. The pollution there is different than it is here. So when in the United States they make immunizations like for polio and that kind of stuff, it's pretty much developed for the DNA of people living in the United States. So long story short, these people coming from China, that their inside their body was slightly different. When the kid got immunized, he got polio. So what I had to do is project, okay, now the kid's 2 years old, and the Department of Justice had this case because the government was being sued because they're the ones that came up with the shots for the kid. And I really don't understand all the medical stuff of why it happened, but it did happen. The kid got polio. So what I needed to do is, in my peer-reviewed research, develop a rehabilitation plan like this, taking polio into account on what kind of jobs this person could do. You follow me? So every case is going to have different facts, different things going on, but I would still follow the same methodology to come up with my conclusions. Because if I don't, then when I get in the court, I'm going to have problems. So that is that. So let's look at a rehabilitation plan. So you guys, does anybody have any questions about a job analysis? So it's basically determined, can the person physically, mentally, emotionally do the job? Now think about it. If the person can't physically or cognitively do the job, am I going to talk about training them for this job? No. Because even if they can go to school, they can't do the job, right? Now the next piece of that is labor market survey. Are the jobs there? So piece number one, can you physically do it? Okay, the doctors say yes. Piece number two is labor market survey. Are the jobs there? Because even if you can physically do the job and you could even do the schooling, if there are no more jobs, think of like elevator operator. Unless you're in a super fancy hotel, they're not going to have a person that their only job is to do elevators. But 100 years ago or 50 years ago, there's a lot of people doing that job. Or think about how technology has changed the office place. There used to be a lot of file clerks, but now with technology, that job's gone. So what a labor market survey will do is determine, do the jobs exist? What do they pay? How much is the growth rate of the job? Think of like nursing. It's growing really fast because people need nurses, right? So for me, before I would go down and develop a rehabilitation plan about sending you to school or doing whatever, job analysis has got to be yes, and the labor market survey has got to be yes. Then we'll talk about going down that pathway. Because if you can't physically or emotionally do it, or the jobs aren't there, why train you as in job X, right? You see how like I follow like it's like a systematic and scientific approach to coming up with my recommendations. I mean, that's just how I do business. So what this is rehabilitation plan. So I met with the person at the attorneys, we did the testing, I develop like my assessment, then I take the results, because think of the chapters you've already read, right? Now we have the assessment results, now I'm putting together the rehab plan, and that's what this is. So let's just look at it real quick. So it has now first thing, have anybody heard the word claimant before? Do you guys know what that word means? It means they have a claim. It means they are suing somebody. They're blaming somebody for their disability. They have a claim. So when you have like a lawsuit, say you're walking down the street and, I don't know, the police car hits you when it's running to, or fire truck hits you when it's going to fire. You would have a lawsuit against probably like DC or whoever. And then you would be considered a claimant. You are arguing that you're entitled to some compensation because you're disabled because of someone else's mistakes. That's what a claimant is. That's what workers' compensation is. So that's really what the client is. Client, claimant, or if you're in the public sector, consumer. Have you heard that word before? Probably in my lectures. So if you're working in the state agencies, the client is called a consumer. In the private sector, they're called clients. If you're involved in like litigation, they could be called claimants. When I meet with the people now in the forensic capacity, they are called evaluees because we do not have a client-counsel relationship. So in other words, when I meet with them for the first time, I'll explain that we're not going to have an ongoing client-counsel relationship. I would explain the limitations of confidentiality. I would talk about my roles, their roles, what I charge per hour, all this kind of stuff, so everything's on the table. Then I get them to sign like an informed consent form. Like you guys signed informed consent starting here at GW. So basically we have here like the insurance company's numbers, the workers' comp number. We have, you know, the demographics, where they live, what's their phone number, what's their social, what's their age, how old are they. TT benefits, temporary total disability. So this person, again, is getting paid 2/3 of their original salary when they are my clients. You can see this is the lady that was a teacher. So she was like a fill-in teacher. They called it teacher/floater. So she didn't work full-time, so she was only making $300 a week. And you can see that's why she's only getting $200 in benefits. Think 2/3. So the people that are working with me when they're disabled are getting 2/3 of whatever they made before the disability happened. 300, 200. See, 2/3? So, and you can see my anticipated wages. So here is like the attorney's information, and then importantly, the plan specifications. So these are the jobs I'm shooting for. So everybody knows what jobs are shooting for in the corresponding salary ranges, right? Why is that important? So say we do all this stuff and I get you the job and you don't take it. And the reason is, well, I want more money. Well, wait a minute. We agreed from X to Y. This job pays between X and Y. You follow me? So this is really what a rehab plan is in the private sector. It's a contract. And I'm going to hold you to a contract. Now, in the public sector, it's going to be a little different where, you know, you might be able to change it here and there. In the private sector, once this is signed, it's a done deal. There is no backing out. You get one bite of the apple and that's it. So again, here, this person had an FCE, kind of like in this one, they called it the work performance evaluation, but it's the same thing. So look here, I know the print is a little small, but you can see the FCE. So this person in an 8-hour day can stand for, what's it say, 15 minutes, walk 30 minutes, lift 13 pounds frequently, 23 pounds occasionally, pushing 18 pounds. See how detailed it is? It's like very, very specific. Now, as a rehabilitation counselor, that's data that I use in my evaluation and then for my rehab plan and future job placement. Now, my vocational assessment, this basically summarizes my 6 or 7 page report, kind of what kind of jobs they're shooting for and what kind of assets she has. Then on the next page, where do these salaries come from? Do I pick them from outer space? No. They come from the Department of Labor. And every state also has its own Department of Labor. So I mentioned the labor market survey. Remember, job analysis, can you do the job physically, mentally, emotionally? Labor market is what do the jobs pay? Are they out there? What benefits and all that kind of stuff. So the federal government, the Department of Labor, will say, okay, for rehab counselors, there's 250,000 jobs, and I'm just making these numbers up, in the whole United States. Then in the state of Maryland, there might be 3,000. Then in Baltimore City, there might be 300. And there might be 50 current open jobs. See how it's like macro to microeconomics? So what this is here is the labor market data from the federal government, the big picture, and then also from the state government. That's where these numbers on the front page for the salaries come from. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically developing this rehab plan / contract that says we're going to do all these things. I'm going to go get you training, counsel you, set up interviews. But when we find these jobs, if we find you a job within this range, you're going to take it. Okay? Now on the next page, what this is job placement. See this on page 4 where it says A? So the first thing, goals and objectives. Part-time, suitable, gainful employment. Remember I said that suitable, gainful employment before? It means a job that fits who they are and gives them decent wages for what she brings to the table. I'm going to utilize her transferable skills. Remember I mentioned that word before. Her interests, their experience, and so on. Now the claimants / client's responsibilities. Will actively participate in her program of vocational rehabilitation. She'll make employment contacts, make records of all employer contacts. Remember, I keep job search logs. She's going to dress appropriately for the interviews, let me know if anything bad happens, and once we get her job, perform all the responsibilities to the best of her ability. Now think of the person that walked off the job. They broke that last sentence. Upon employment, you will perform all the job responsibilities to the best of her ability. The argument would be, wait a minute, you're only there for 3 hours and you walked off the job. Did you really try to the best of your ability? No. Now, counsel responsibilities. So I complete vocational surveys. Remember those things we went through in the report? Okay, there are 75 jobs. Here's 8 that are in the ballpark. I'm going to do contacting employers, going to submit a resume, cover letters. I'm going to do a job analysis on these employment opportunities, submit it to her doctors for review. I'll monitor her return to work progress after a period of time and then close her case. So that's a difference right there. In the private sector, once the person goes to work, I would follow them for a month, for 30 days. If you are in the public sector, you need to follow them for 90 days. Now, why is this 30 days or 90 days important? Because like for me, when I was your age, I would get paid my bonuses by how many people I got jobs. We'd have a placement contest. So in our agency, whoever won it for the year might get like $20,000 bonus. Every quarter, whoever won it might get, $5,000 bonus. So I'm motivated. That's one way to motivate your clients to have good job placement experience. But what happens if the person quits the job on 29 instead of 30? I get 0 credit. See how I'm motivated to keep these people working because it translates into helping me and helping my family. So you can see how everybody's parties or responsibilities are laid out. And then this next page is where you put your John Hancock, where you sign the plan. So you can see here, the claimant signs it, their attorney that represents them signs it, the insurance company signs it, their attorney will sign it, I as the rehab counselor will sign it, sometimes the person at the college will sign it, and sometimes the public rehabilitation counselor will sign it. I want to get everybody on the same page so that we're all working towards the same goal. Now I summarized job placement relatively quickly, but you kind of see how we go through different phases. Now, if we're in the public sector, we have to qualify them for services. In the public sector, what qualifies you is money. Somebody's paying me to help you. So then once we get past that, then we need basically data, medical evidence. So we might send them for a medical evaluation, a psychological evaluation, whatever. Think of a person as a puzzle. I'm getting these different pieces of the puzzle so I can formulate my hypothesis. So then I could take that hypothesis from my evaluation or assessment into the rehabilitation plan, spell out the steps, how do we go from point A to point B, and then make it happen. And then what the reports will do is they will monitor the progress on a kind of, not every single day, every single second, but usually there might be a couple activities each week. And for a month, just document all the stuff that happened. And then this is how I would get paid. Well, really how it worked when I was your age is the person that owned the company would send this in. Then, I don't know, Allstate Insurance would send my boss a check, and then he would get paid, and I would turn in my timesheets and get paid whatever. Now, the secret is, this is the secret that you're never going to read in the book, is if you really want to make some decent money doing this, there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, right? But if I could have, say I'm the business owner and I have 10, 20, 30 master's counselors working for me, and maybe I charge the insurance company $200 per hour for their time, but I pay the person $30 an hour, $40 an hour. You follow me? It turns into a good sized number. One of the things that I've been working on is, what do rehabilitation counselors make in the private sector? What do you guys think they make? I'm just curious. You might not know. You probably don't know. Well, let me give you a little bit of background. Have you ever heard of the American Counseling Association, ACA? Okay. So in 2014, they did a study of what different types of counselors, and it's going to be a mixture of public and private, because you make more money in private than you do in public. What do they make? So, and I'm going to be off a little bit on the money, but the lowest paid counselors were clinical mental health counselors. Next in the rung were school counselors. Next in the rung were rehab counselors. And the top of the thing were counselor educators like your professors here. So if we're just saying clinical, school, rehab counselors make the most. That's a fact. It's undeniable. Then CRC. You guys want to get your CRC, right? They did a study and found out, and let me go back to the money. So I think rehab counselors, I'm taping this so I can't pull up the study, but rehab counselors and school counselors were in the 50s. Clinical mental health was in the 40s. Counselor educators were like 66. Now that's a mixture of all kinds of people. But in the private sector, think about it. You're in business for yourself. You have lots of clinical experience. You have licensure. You have all the bells and whistles. So you're going to charge a higher rate than just a rookie counselor just starting out. So long story short, for one group of rehab counselors, the mean was $125,000. Now, one thing that's not fair in our society is men and women are paid different. That's a fact. Now, some countries like Iceland just passed a law saying that men and women must earn the same amount of money if all things are equal, same education, experience, and so on. But in the United States, what the surveys will show, if we forget about other demographic variables, like race, for example, women roughly earn 80 cents on the dollar. If we just look at women as a dichotomy, women versus men. If you want to throw in another variable, say race, Asian American women make 90 cents on the dollar. Caucasian women are in the 80s, and then depending on the study, African American women are like in the 70s, and Latino women are in the 60s. That's not fair, but it is what it is. In this research on study 1, the mean was 125, but men made 150 and change, and women made around 100. That's not fair. But there are things called confounding variables, like what if they took off a few years to have a family? Think about our bell-shaped curve. We're making money, then we take ourselves out of the labor market. You don't usually jump back to right where you were. There's discrimination and prejudice. That's a reason for people making less money, whatever. And then the other study that I did, the mean, so we have two groups, 500 counselors in one, and these are all private people. The next study, about 300 counselors. So the total sample is about 800. So in study number 2, the mean was higher. It was about, I'm reticent just to throw out numbers. So study 1, the mean was 125. I think the mean in the second group was about 150 and change. And for men, it was around 200. For women, it was like around 120 or 130. Again, and one thing that was fascinating is is the numbers were different, but the spread was almost identical. So in one group, the women made 66 cents on the dollar. The other one made 65 cents on the dollar. I mean, that's almost identical. All the numbers are different. And what I'm doing now is I'm putting these data sets together and going to publish the big sample with 800 counselors, essentially. Now, again, for whatever reason, and I don't have an answer to the question, why are the women making less? I didn't answer that question. I just asked, what are you making? What is your licensure? What is your certifications? What state are you in? What kind of benefits do you have? Are you in private practice? What kind of stuff are you doing? That's the kind of data that I collected. But I guess the moral of the story is if one day you want to make the decision to have your own private practice, you can make a good living at it. You really can. So I know we've covered a lot of stuff. What questions do you guys have? I wish the people online could ask questions, but they're wherever, so they can't. What questions do you guys have about job placement? Gotta have some questions. I know I went through stuff relatively quickly. Think about it like this. As a private rehabilitation counselor, this was how I was evaluated. My job placement statistics was how I would be evaluated for keeping a job. Like if I had a job and I didn't gain by jobs, guess what? I'm fired. I'm looking for a job.
So when you were discussing your experience and the clients you work with,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about what I like to do, and primarily I like to work with people that like have felonies, that are just being like incarcerated. So I imagine that there's a toll that takes upon the person yourself looking for them to find a job. Have you had experience
Well,
with that? And
you know
what
what?
do you do?
Couple things. I actually just met with a doc student. She's here at GW in the PhD program, and that's was her job. She worked in Kansas at a women's jail and helping them make the transition from incarceration to employment. Just walking over here with her, talking with her, she missed it, but yeah, it was challenging sometimes. Personally, with my personality, I wouldn't want that kind of job. Let's think about it for a second. Would you have any problems working with a child molester or a rapist? And I'm not saying answer the question, but those are the ethical dilemmas that you would probably be faced with. That's not everybody's cup of tea. For me, I like to see results. Maybe you can just tell, think about my background, economics and business administration. I want to put in my time, but I want to see success, close the case and move on. With that population, that's difficult because think of the recidivism rate. They're always coming back. Substance abuse is usually part of that equation where that probably wound up for them either breaking law or getting caught or who knows what. They probably have prior trauma. They probably have other things like the lead paint cases that I mentioned before working with inner city youth. Because they got this brain damage when they were 0, 1, 2 years old, it affected them in all these ways. Quit school, they're in all kinds of trouble. One thing that I also do during my evaluations is called a genogram. Do you guys know what genograms are? So not only do I ask like your family tree, but what did mom and dad do? What were their jobs? How far did they go into school? And I do that for their aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, brothers, sisters, because it gives me a picture of who their family is. One thing that I never even imagined before I started doing the work with the less socioeconomic well-off people is I really never realized how much, think of like super and developmental type theories. Okay, when you're growing up, that really is going to affect you in your future. I can't tell you how many times when I would do my structured interview and, okay, what's your mom do? Well, she got pregnant with me at 15 and, she never really worked. How much that pattern repeats itself.
A generational curse.
I don't know what you would call it, but the patterns to some degree repeat themselves. That's why I do the genogram, because research and the literature tells me that if certain traumas happen to people, it probably will affect them negatively down the road. That's why I'm looking for this data. Because like the lady that I did all the stuff for her and she walked off the job, I didn't know about the trauma variable, right? But that's what blew up our case. That's what really hurt her. Now she still went back to work, but instead of making, I don't know, $20 an hour, she probably makes 12. And she doesn't have as good benefits and everything else.
You had known about the trauma variable beforehand. How would you have handled it?
See, that's a tough one. That's actually a really good question.
I was asking a similar question. How do you deal with like clients that have substance abuse or severe mental illnesses?
It's tough. Medication compliance is critical. You know, what happens with people with severe mental illness? You know, many times when they start feeling good, they'll stop taking their meds, and it's not if, it's when things are just going to self destruct. Substance abuse is a tricky thing because relapse is just part of recovery. You know, for me, many times substance abuse is a hidden or second or third diagnosis. So the person injured their back, they've had all these surgeries, you know, they're depressed, and then their doctor prescribed them all these Oxycontins, and then they start doing this, and then maybe they start throwing alcohol in it. You can see how they're going down. And I, as a counselor, need to be aware of that and on top of it. And I've sent people to detox before. I remember this one guy, he probably wanted to punch me in the face when I told him he wanted to be a truck driver. So in my evaluation, I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're taking Oxycontin and Percocet and whatever, I mean, probably like 10 different medicines. I can't turn you into a truck driver. You can kill somebody out on the road, then I'm responsible. You, if you really want to do this, you have to go through detox and get off all this stuff. Well, my doctor prescribes it. You know, it's a touchy issue. Well, you know, just us talking, imagine if they would stop taking the pain pills they've taken for 10 years, they would go through withdrawal, textbook withdrawal. But sometimes when it's prescribed by the doctor, it's more of a gray area. But for me as the rehabilitation counselor, I'm not going to put myself at risk by putting you behind an 18-wheeler and you go out there and kill somebody. So what I basically said in my evaluation was, is you have to go through 30 days of inpatient detox before we're going to train you as a truck driver. And he hated my guts. And furthermore, when back then in the old days, I used to take a Polaroid. You guys know what Polaroids are? Those little square pictures, you go like this. So I took a picture of everybody when I did my evaluation. When I saw that person 30 days later, they look like a different person. I showed him the picture. He's like, that's not me. Wait a minute, here's your file. This is you. That's how much of a change. And it worked out. And, you know, the guy said, you saved my life. But when you made me do this, I really wanted to kill you. Well, I didn't make him do it. I talked to the attorney and explained why we need to do this. Really, the guy probably wanted to punch me out when I told him you're going inpatient. But part of this equation got the wife involved. You know, I did a lot of moving pieces to go there. So getting back to your question, you know, incarceration, it's a growing population, but there's a lot of stigma and prejudice against those people. A lot of the times they don't have a lot of transferable skills. They don't have a lot of education. It's very challenging. Substance abuse, same thing. You know, I could be Sigmund Freud. But until that person makes the decision that they want to change their life and stop abusing whatever the drug of choice is, whatever I'm saying is probably not going to be effective. You know, maybe they'll keep clean for a while when they have to go through urinalysis and testing and stuff like that. But if we don't get them out of the environment, it's only a matter of time before they go back to seeing their old friends and getting the same old trouble, essentially.
I think it's really amateur. As an amateur, I don't really know what this entails. But like private practice getting involved with reentry and like substance abuse and like.
Well, again, many times it's a hidden disability or second or third diagnosis.
Okay.
So I would be hired not for their substance abuse, but because the truck hit them and they had back injuries and they got orthopedic problems. But as things went on, they started getting depressed and they started abusing X, Y, and Z. So I would have to deal with that, but substance abuse wouldn't be the reason why I'm in the case.
What about incarceration for reentry?
To me, in my practice, I just don't work with those kind of people.
Would you say there's it's still like
It's super needed.
do you still make money doing that? Is that
Well, from my perspective, just being honest, the money that I would make would not compensate me adequately for the stuff that I have to do. That's just me. Other people, it's their life's desire and they love doing it. Really, you know what I've learned is many times people with substance abuse backgrounds, if I can turn them into a counselor helping other people with substance abuse, that helps their recovery. For example, when I was a master's level student, I remember when I was like 20, I went to an AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember this person, like this old grandma getting up. She was probably like 80 years old. She's like, hi, I'm Ruth. I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink in 50 years. I think to myself, yeah, I haven't had a drink in 50 years. How are you an alcoholic? But the mindset is what happens, say, with alcohol is say I was abusing and then when I hit my rock bottom, I was drinking 20 beers a day. What happens is say you take that 10 or 20 year break. You don't start back off at 0. You start back off at 20. That addiction starts back off where it was. So these people need to always think, I'm an addict. I need to every day think about this and think about my recovery so I don't get back into those bad habits. So in my experience, many times when I had people with, substance abuse problems, it was successful turning them into counselors. And that cements their own recovery. Think about like the AA model. One of the things that people do to maintain sobriety is to be a sponsor, to help others, right? Because then they're working, they feel good. I don't really, everybody's going to be different, but deep down inside, they probably think, wow, I'm using what happened to me to help other people, and now I feel better about myself. So, and again, human beings, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. I mean, some people you can do everything right, and they're just always going to do whatever. So, I mean, I've had 1 or 2 interns in that type of environment. See, all the forensic stuff I do is civil, not criminal. I don't do any criminal cases. And that's just my choice because I'm in private practice. I determine who I want to work with, what I'm going to charge, when I'm going to work. It's my call.
Is criminal is just as profitable?
Who's going to pay you? Think about it. There's not a lot of politicians that are really advocating for people that broke the law. Number one, they're not voters. If they're a felon, they can't even vote. So if I was a politician, would I care what they say? I don't know. I mean, think about it. They're a politician to win their votes, right? In theory, you would think, yeah, they want to help everybody. But think about this. Some states now have changed the laws. Like even if you are a felon, you could sometimes vote depending on the state. But think about how DC works. You get lobbyists, you get the politicians to make the laws. The people that have resources and power set the laws. And the people that don't just go with the system, Like, for example, when I was in the private sector, one of my jobs was marketing, bringing in new work. Another one of my jobs was interacting with our lobbyists. So when we would see a law, like in Maryland, coming to Annapolis down the books that would affect the counseling field, we would have our lobbyists go in there and find out what's going on. Like, for example, licensure. There are some states where, say you've been in LPC for 20 years, if you didn't graduate from a K-Crep school, they could take that away from you. I mean, your practice is over. So, and that goes back, how does that happen? Laws and legislation and lobbyists. It's not perfect, but that's our system. So going back to, that's a very noble and wonderful thing, but it doesn't fit who I am. So in other words, when I evaluate people in my assessment or evaluation, I'm testing for intelligence, IQ. I'm testing them for their personality. Why is personality important? Because your personality should match the work environment. And in theory, like John Holland and congruence, then theoretically you're going to do better. So my personality doesn't fit that kind of work. My personality didn't fit being a stockbroker. That's why I left that and became a counselor. I never thought I'd be a counselor. I did it, I just kept going. The reason I got the PhD is because when I would go into court, the person can have a PhD in basket weaving. And the person's like, oh, Dr. So-and-so, oh, wow, that person's an idiot, but they're treating with such respect. Maybe I should do this. It might sound funny, but it's true.
When you first said that, I thought that was the most realist thing ever. Because, people don't say that. It's always some type of, oh, I wanted to heal the world. I've known since I was a child. And I like the way it sounded, people respect me more.
For me, I just want to tell you straight up how the real world is. What my goal is to teach you skills that you'll be able to, transferable skills, that you'll be able to use in the counseling world and make money, make a living at. And maybe one day start your own practice. That's why I'm here. Because it feels good, like maybe you want to be altruistic and help people with the incarceration and move on with their life. I like training new counselors. Because remember I said there's only so many hours in the day, so there's only so many people to work with? Same thing, if I can train 10, 100, 1,000 counselors, that can do a lot of good, more than I ever could. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, to be quite honest. Besides loving doing this stuff. So any other questions?
I have my interview tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know, what exactly are you looking for? I spoke to the classmates.
So ask all kinds of questions like, okay, so we're talking for the site visit, so, what populations do they work with? What are the specials they have? What kind of credentials are you looking for in a counselor? When's the last time you hired a counselor? What do you pay the counselors? How much do you charge for your services? What is your job placement success rate? That's a very important one because we could do all this wonderful stuff, but if people don't get the jobs, well then what's it for? Um, do your homework, meaning look at their webpage, look at their mission, their goals, their history. Go into that interview with that knowledge in your head so you can ask better questions. Furthermore, I'd probably try to do research on whoever you're interviewing with. Oh, I see you went to Florida State, or whatever. Make small talk with them. Break the ice. Because one of the things I'm hoping is maybe this can turn into an internship for you. Who knows? Maybe it could turn into a job. I say this every year for foundations, and people are like, yeah, right. Many times people call me back and say, you know what, you were right. They like me, that turned into my internship. If you do a good job in your internship, it should be a job.
How long do you think, or how quick do you think, what's a good adequate amount of time you think would be for a person that graduates from this program and gets a licensure to actually open up our own practice?
Let's think about it. Are you working 10 hours a week or are you working 40 hours a week? There's other variables in that equation. Do you have one client? You have 50 clients. The more accurate thing is how much clinical experience do you really have? So say, hypothetically, when we're talking about the labor market, you graduated here, and then you and your boyfriend or fiance had a kid, and you haven't really worked. So it's been 10 years since graduation, but you have zero clinical experience. You follow me? So it just depends on how much experience you really have. And again, if you only have work 1 hour a week versus 40 hours a week, so the timeline is going to be different. And you want to get into either, because there's private practice, then there's forensic. Forensic is the top of the mountain. So if you picture a pyramid, only 3% of rehab counselors do forensic work because it's very stressful. It takes a lot of research, and again, it goes back to your personality. So if I would do like the Holland, or if I would do like the MBTI, like investigative is definitely one of my things. And you could probably see in these cases I'm working in, I'm like an investigator. I'm looking for evidence. I'm looking for data to form my conclusions. Now, most of the people in this room, for the Holland codes, your first code would probably be S for social, because you want to help people, right? My first letter is not S. I got an S in the mix, but since I'm from a business background and stuff, it's more like an investigator would be mine. So it's just everyone's different. You know who has the answer to that question? You, not me. And I would even argue that perhaps you don't have the answer right now. Why? Because in your practicum and internship and maybe your first couple jobs, you'll learn what you like and what you don't like. Think of like Goldilocks, too hot, too cold, just perfect. And finding a job can be like that as well. What research will show is that many people in our society will try 7 jobs before they find the one that really fits them. Now, some people might get lucky and get right off the bat. Some people might never find the right job. But on average, around 7 or 8 is about right. So, well, I think that's about all we have time for today. Just keep up the good work. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm here to help. And we'll be meeting next month. I sent it off on Blackboard, but it's roughly a month from now. I think I won't speculate. It's up on Blackboard. But, just keep doing what you're doing. And for like the DQs and the quizzes, kind of have the quiz essay like your DQ. So I've been really kind of generous with some of the people's quiz essays. But think about it. It's going to be the same standard, like hopefully 2-3 paragraphs, maybe not as heavy as on citations, but have the narrative basically be like your discussion question. And if I've probably been giving you feedback on your quizzes, and you probably already know this. Sound cool? All right, guys. Well, it was nice seeing you. If you need something, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Well, you'll see me next week, but I'll see you